I'm with the Missouri Folk Arts Program. I am their folk arts specialist and coordinator of the Traditional Arts Apprenticeship Program, where I've been now for 23 years. Today I'm with Niall Gannon, who is a master Irish fiddler, and he is also a former apprentice in the program way back in 1986, which is definitely a long time ago. What motivated you to become a fiddle player, Irish fiddle player?
My mother made me, so that's the short answer. All of us started around the age of, I think I was 5, Liam was 4, and Sean was 7. So with our family coming from Ireland, it was my mom's desire to keep us connected to our heritage, and we would do that by learning music, starting off specifically here in the States with the Suzuki method in order to gain a mastery of the instrument, and then Irish music maybe became more a part of our life as we got a little bit older, closer to age 10, and that's when we started to go to workshops and learn from other musicians, and then eventually to Ireland.
Okay, all right, okay. And some of those other, were there particular musicians who your parents put you in touch with?
Yes, there was a lady named Donna Weehee, who was our first Suzuki violin teacher, and then Marion Williams was our next one. She was a member of the St. Louis Philharmonic Orchestra, and then Jackie Gross was the third. And I continued with her all the way through high school. So I guess when I started the apprenticeship program, I still think I was studying under Jackie.
Okay, so you did both classical and Irish folk.
Yes.
So together.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. That's an amazing background.
I think my mom wanted us to do that because when I got to high school age, for example, there wasn't any Irish musicians my age to play with, and so to get into an orchestra or a band, I needed to have a more diverse musical repertoire outside of Irish, and so and that did serve me well.
It's a common thing that your parents started you off. What
Right.
motivated you? What was your fiddle journey kind of?
I would say it was the vehicle to get to Ireland to stay with my grandmother and to spend a week with other kids my age. The program's called Scalexia that always precedes the Flacchiol, which is the All-Ireland Championships. So that week that precedes it is day-long workshops with your peers, learning from master musicians, learning different styles, and really just the enjoyment of being away from home, seeing something new.
Wow.
So that was a big motivator to stay.
And stick with it. What an opportunity to go back to Ireland. So you apprenticed with James Kelly, and I read a little bit about him, and apparently he started learning from his own dad, who was from County Clare. They lived in Dublin. So,
Right.
How did that apprenticeship, that was a little different because, well, you just said it, there were no fiddlers to play with.
So there was a very nice upward arc of Irish music that started to implant itself into St. Louis, and John D. McGurk's Irish Pub was one of the things that brought really a river of the greatest of the greats into St. Louis, and they would play 5 or 6 nights a week. So at the time, James was playing with a group called Bowhand, and that was Paddy O'Brien, originally from Offaly in Ireland, and Dahi Spruill was the singer. So my mom and dad would take us to hear these musicians when they were playing, and of course it was very unique that you weren't just in an Irish bar listening to Irish music. It was literally the greats of that generation that would come through. So I think it was my mom and Kevin started talking, or my mom and James started talking, and he agreed to do the apprenticeship, and I think that was my senior year in high school.
Okay, okay, that sounds, yeah.
And that's what brought him to St. Louis, and that's why we had that block of time to spend together, because he was on maybe an 8 to 10 week stint at McGurk's.
Oh my goodness, he
Yeah.
was there that long.
Right.
Because I was wondering how, because I guess we should mention that he actually still resides, I think, in Florida.
He does, yeah.
That's right. So I was wondering how, it's one thing if you're meeting halfway from two sides of the
That's right.
state, it's another thing when they're many states away. So
Real,
that was your
real
chance.
opportunity when he was in town.
So you got to really focus during that period.
Yeah.
What are your memories of that apprenticeship, or how he taught?
I remember, because this was probably the first time in my life that I had that private tutoring, unlike these group workshops, which are a lot of fun, and you learn a lot, but you don't have that one-on-one like you would with the apprenticeship. And I remember before we even took out our instruments and rosined up the bows, he talked about how his style of playing and the style he was going to teach to me was very deliberate and pure. And that goes down to, the Irish rolls, which sound very quick and sharp and violent when they're played. And he broke down, by writing them out, how we were going to do these rolls slowly, then medium, and then fast. And that they were going to be different than the way I had done them before, with the finished product just being more clear and fitting better into the music. So that was before we even started playing a tune. That stuck with me. And we must have done 1,000 of those rolls exercises.
Oh, I can imagine.
And then when I had students later, because that was something that was so helpful to me, no sense in reinventing the wheel. That became the exercise that I would do, whether it was the violin or the tin whistle or the accordion. That exercise of breaking down the rolls, so that they could be perfect when they showed up in the tune.
Okay, that's great. So did you consider, was that a real challenge for you?
It was a new way of doing things. Yes, everything was a challenge. I was not very literate as a music reader at the time. I had depended on learning by ear my whole life. And James wanted to do this by writing out the tunes because he wanted those grace notes and those rolls to be played at a specific spot. So that was something that was enjoyable, but it was a task to get to a new place. And when I hear James play now, and now there's so much material on the internet, and I see him play those tunes deliberately and with those rolls, they're exactly the way he said they should be 40 years ago, right? So he has stayed true to his own style.
And when you say he was going to teach you a pure style, what did that mean? Did that equate with clean?
Well, across the arc of Irish fiddle players, you would have on one side very aggressive, deliberate players that would lean into faster playing. That would be Paddy Killorn back in the day, and maybe Frankie Gavin would be considered a more modern player who was so sharp and crisp, but there was a lot of technique and lightning fast ornamentation. And then the other side of that, I would say you would have like the Martin Hayeses of the world, or a James Kelly, where you would say more melodic, deliberate, and that they were going for a sweetness in the music. And when you listen to the recordings, it's very different than a more energetic player. Both of them are very beautiful. Of course, when you're 18 years old, which one you think you want to do?
Speed.
You want to do the speed. And so, but then looking back on it, you realize, and of course now the age that I am now, I have a deep appreciation for the sweetness of the music and the players that will play more slowly and melodically, and sometimes with harmonies, just to add color and warmth to the music. Both are within the Irish tradition, both are as genuine, as pure as the other, but James was my first introduction to that type of playing.
That's a really wonderful exposition of what you got from him, I feel. So that's great.
Wonderful.
I guess now, when did you start teaching at all?
I was teaching a little bit, 7th and 8th grade and through high school, but maybe my junior or senior year, I started to teach more.
Was that like some of the young?
That was some of the younger kids within St. Louis Irish Arts, and Kevin Buckley was my first individual student. And of course, teaching became a journey in and of itself, different than being a player or just focusing on what you do yourself. And that brought and still brings so many great memories, not just about music or about my time with Kevin or his father dropping him off, but really big life lessons that came from it. You hear people talking about music opening the doors. We can talk about that because it has basically led me to where I am today.
Okay. And when you talk about let's open the doors, can you tell me what you mean by that?
Well, the two are connected. Kevin was my apprentice years ago, and I think he was in 7th or 8th grade when he started coming to the house. And I remember teaching him, and one of the things now is I look back and I could be taking lessons from Kevin, right? He could be the master, I could be the student. And when you're teaching a child twice a week or once a week for many years, you don't see that progress that you might see if you divide that up from yearly plots or every 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Kevin has become such an accomplished musician, not only as an Irish fiddle player, but on many instruments. But we had a great relationship through those years when I was teaching him. And teaching all of these students also showed me varied abilities. I had a couple of students with special needs, right? Not all of them are going to rise that level of surpassing the master, but there was lessons that came from that. And then, one day I was teaching probably an 8 or 9-year-old girl, and her father, after the lesson, offered me an internship at his company. And that was a financial services company, Shears and Lehman Brothers. And so that's why we're sitting in this office 32 years later.
Is that amazing?
So you talk about, did the music play a role in your life? It's very easy for me to answer that question, right? Because I didn't know where I was going to go as a career. I didn't think that I had the ability to be, an Irish music star or a symphony player. And that lottery ticket came because of the music. It came because I showed up in a room to teach a child this art form, and life took over. So I have to be thankful, to my mom and dad for giving me the music, for James and all those teachers who put their energy and their heart into me, because I have benefited in many ways, much more than just what happens on the fingerboard of the instrument.
Can you talk about the benefits to you? I mean, obviously, this became your career. Wow.
Yeah.
Who would have thought, right? One lesson, couple of lessons, and you find what you want to do in life.
Right.
What does it mean to you, kind of personally, or in relationship to your family?
Well, it like I said, gratitude, to my mom and dad for having me stick with it. I did not display any pronounced athletic skill in my childhood. And my mom and dad, knowing that this was going to be my thing, and now looking back over life, you can see that the music wove its way into pretty much every big decision, every blessing that I have in my life. I guess if the internship was 1986, I was looking at colleges. So I picked the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina, specifically because it had the pipe band. And I was a drummer at the time, and that was something that was very attractive to me. So the music brought me to that military academy, and then moving into the Army Reserve after that. All of those things would have not been possible if not for the music, right? Every one of those decision points in life, the career, the college, I wouldn't have met my wife because it was a group of kids that I met through the orchestra in high school. So the music literally can be traced to all these blessings. So I guess that the message would be to younger people or older people who are studying an art form, it may not be about that destination, about you having an album of your own, or you playing in Carnegie Hall, or in one of the places where the greats are. But it's almost certain to open up something in your life that wouldn't have been there had you not picked up that instrument. Maybe you'll stick with it, maybe you will love it, but the music connects us to people, right? And by the way, it's not as fun to play in a room by yourself, right? You want to play with other musicians. You want to play for people that will enjoy it. So I just go back to the fact that music should have a spot on the periodic table, right? Because it's so important, right? You look at the role it plays in people's lives, and I guess I have to be a champion for that because it happened for me.
And you had a community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so maybe moving into today, the enjoyment is when I hear Kevin Buckley play, or when I hear Ian Walsh, one of my other students, and I see the level that they brought the music to. They would have been tops in the United States in the 1970s. The way they play right now, and to think that our city and this region now has so many good musicians, and there's plenty of opportunities for 10 or even 12 of them to get together. And so then you'll see a LinkedIn post or Facebook post that one of them has come out with an album, and it's nothing but pride to see what they have done with the art form, and you have gratitude that they were a part of your life, and maybe you help just a little bit nudge them to where they are, because they're so excellent now at their art form. So yeah, deep sense of pride.
I was going to ask about, but now Greg Crone was also an apprentice of yours. Tell me about, okay.
So it's funny, we're talking about chapters in life, right? So I was in high school when I was the apprentice, and then I was just out of college when Greg was my apprentice. Okay. I was no longer in high school, and Greg being my senior, some of the life lessons and the things that he had seen in his life, of course, these are things that you talk about before and after the lessons. So when Greg came, I believe I was still living at home with my parents, and we would have those lessons in the basement. And so again, the role exercises that James Kelly gave to me, those happened thousands of times. Because I would do them with him, I felt like I was loosening up or getting a little tighter myself. And I'm just thinking of this now. The first tune that James taught me was called Langstrom's Pony, and it was a very odd entry into a jig in 6/8 time, and I loved playing that tune with James. And so again, not reinventing the wheel, I passed that tune to Greg and tried to teach it to him the way that it was taught to me. So again, you see this pattern of, it's not just notes on a page, right? Or sounds that happen through the reverberation of the strings. It's this thing that maybe James's father taught him that tune, then he taught it to me, and then I taught it to Greg. And then we hope at the end of that, that justice was done to that tune, right? Because I don't know who wrote it or what year it was written, but I know it was a beautiful piece of music, and you want as a player to finish that piece and say that I did that tune justice, right? I'm proud of the way I played that. I hope these people will enjoy it too.
And do you think what you're talking about, is that the most important thing in terms of teaching an apprentice, to teach the roles?
That was a technical part of it that sticks with me. I would say the human interaction was equally as valuable. Those life lessons that come into play. Greg wound up being a mentor to me in the years after that apprenticeship. I remember going to Columbia in that first year where I was an apprentice, and I met Martin Bergen.
Oh my, yes.
The cowboy poet and
Yes.
saddle maker. And you had put us into these groups, right? And of course, I didn't know anything about horses or saddles or cowboy poetry. He didn't know anything about our Irish music. But we were interacting, and the common thread was that doing something the easy way was usually not the right way. And there were parallels with the roles, trying to do them, even though it's boring to just play 1,000 roles. It will take you to a place where the music will sound better. And I'm sure that there's a parallel with the way that he wrote his poetry or did the saddle work, that the easy way, or having a machine do what the human hand could do, we shouldn't be so quick to do that. That's when electrified music was popularizing. And so I keep coming back to those life lessons, and of course Martin has passed away.
Yes, he did.
And I wonder if I hadn't had that experience, would I have that same passion or respect for doing things the right way? Because I heard it from him, and I tried to instill it in Greg. And then as we played music together, there was a few life lessons that I needed to learn that weren't on the fingerboard of the violin, but they were things that he shared with me that I think made me a better person. So I think what you're doing with this program, putting two human beings together to allow that art form not to die, that's a big one, because some of it is so unique. And then all the things that go into it, because when that piece of music is played right, it's not a technical thing. It's not something that a machine could do. In our tradition, it's never played exactly the same way. And you wonder how emotion and your life's history reflects on your playing. I think it does. It has to.
What does the master artist apprentice relationship mean to you today, all these years later?
Mentorship in a very full sense of the word, not just related to the art form, but through all of the lessons. It's that time before and after where you get to know that person, and you're talking about what made them who they are, right? You'd love to know more about Martin's story. So I think it's that. There's definitely this concept of repeatability, right? You want this art form to be able to exist, and even though it will grow and evolve, as all art forms do, I think that apprentice will always want to do justice to the way that master taught the material, and even if their playing style, and it's for sure going to become unique to that player, there will always be that connection or that appreciation for the master's style. And then there's going to be those things, like with James and me, the technical part of mastering these seemingly tiny, minute things are really important. You talk about an Irish roll when you hear it played, in a reel, very, a very hasty pace. It's a little bit like the frog catching a fly on the tongue. It happens just in an instant. And what James impressed on me was, don't just blast through that and assume that nobody heard it. There's a way, you've got to put that fourth finger down with the same care that you would any of the other longer notes. And just because it's a 16th or 32nd, you still want to pay attention and be true to that note. That's something that stuck with me. And doesn't that really relate to everything we do in life? To pay attention to the little things, because they matter.
When you think back, one of the reasons, beyond the fact that you had your mom and dad and you had developed a relationship with him through him coming to St. Louis for touring, there was nobody else in St. Louis to teach you at the time.
No.
And I am right about that, right? Because I was pretty sure, yeah.
Richard Lavin was an Irish fiddle player who would occasionally come out to play, but we had to go to Chicago, to see Kaylee's, right, where big groups of musicians would play for dancers, right? So to see Irish music in its pure form, right? Doing what it's supposed to do, bring people together and have a great time dancing.
Yeah.
So I think what you're asking is, would I have liked to have had a program like St. Louis Irish Arts in my formative years?
Well, that's one way to look at it, but
yeah, would have loved that.
But I guess I was thinking that single apprenticeship, in a way, and also for your mom as well, when she worked with Maureen Hall.
That's right.
That would be Helen Gannon.
Yeah.
She is a force of nature in her own right. but that kind of propelled St. Louis Irish Arts forward. And I know Larry McNally arriving, I think he came to America in like 1982, and I know that helped.
Yeah.
But you fostered the fiddle in St. Louis Irish Arts, and I don't think you're struggling for fiddlers anymore.
It's great. Yeah, there's so many of them, and to see them all play together, it's incredible.
And to be a little selfish, I mean, just to say, it makes us, I think, feel good even though Lisa and I were not involved at the time, but when you see something kind of come to fruition over the years,
well,
as we have seen with other apprentices as well, what they've done.
It's like Babe Ruth pointing the bat to the left field stands, right? You started this program 40 years ago, trying to make these art forms repeatable, to grow them, to make sure that they weren't lost. Success, in my opinion.